So how do you respond when someone talks about their hurt?
How do you know when to back off when having a spiritual conversation?
I just started asking him questions about, do you think that's how God set it up, that we're supposed to be good, but we don't really know how good, and die at the end and find out. Grew up in the church, went to college, kind of fell away from the faith a little bit. It came down to I'm doing better and I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm on the right path kind of conversation. And I said, yeah, okay. As he was talking, I just said,
This week on the Reach Podcast. All right. Hey, everybody. We are back. It's another episode of the Reach Podcast, and I'm joined by Dave Wilson, who is Search's area director in Nashville, Tennessee, and a longtime friend of mine. Dave, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, it's fun to be here.
It's always fun having you around, and we're just going to dive right in because we're looking at another conversation that you've had. So set up the conversation we're going to talk about today.
All right. So this was a guy named Joe and in Nashville, and we were connected through a mutual friend. It was, you remember, it's one of those where somebody says, "Hey, you ought to meet so and so," and it was lunch, and really pleasant guy and business guy in Nashville, and so we were just getting to know each other and talking, and he knew. He knew enough about me and Search and that I don't think he was surprised when I started asking about, just tell me about your spiritual journey and how you grew up and that sort of thing. So we started talking about that and grew up in the South. And it quickly came to, about what you have to do to be a good Christian, I think was the phrase he used, and how to become a good Christian. And
you felt qualified to answer that.
Yeah, well, I was trying to figure out what he meant by that, and which took a little more probing.
Well, just if you just follow me around for a couple days, you'll probably get a good idea.
Oh boy, wouldn't that be no. And so as we were talking, and I suspected it was going to kind of end up at the works base.
Yeah.
Excuse me, which is good barbecue, which is where it ended up. And so as he was just kind of talking about always been in the church, and very typical story, not too similar from mine, is he grew up in the church, went to college, kind of fell away from the faith a little bit, but, got married and getting a job and just getting some traction in life and wants to focus more on that. And I think that's kind of why we were having this meeting. And so it came down to, I'm doing better and I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm on the right path kind of conversation. And I said, yeah, okay. And so as he was talking, I just started asking him questions about, do you think that's how God set it up, that we're supposed to be good, but we don't really know how good, and we'll just die at the end and find out, if we're right or not. And he's like, no, I've got a good feel for how I'm doing and that sort of thing. And so I said, yeah, I just can't believe in a God like that. And I remember he looked at me like, why are we having this conversation? You're the God person, And he said, well, what do you mean? And I said, I just can't believe in a God that says, just do your very best, or what you think in your gut is right. And then at the end, you'll know if it was enough or not. I said, if he's doing that, I think he's just up there jerking us around. He's just messing with us. And I'll never forget Blaine. Like I said, we're at a lunch table. And he pushed back from the table and just sat back and said, I've never thought of that. Mm. And I think any time we're having conversations, if we get someone to say that, you've really, but I kind of wanted to just meet him where he was at and just go, you know what? When I think about what you're saying, here's what bothers me about it. I wasn't telling him he was wrong. I was just like, here's the flaw I see in that. And when I said it, he was like, yeah, I see it too.
Yeah, this is such a great conversation because it's something that people will run into if they seek to have these kind of conversations, which is a lot of the people who don't know Jesus are people that would call themselves Christians.
All day long.
And so if you're thinking, I don't know any atheists. Well, most people don't know an atheist.
Right.
There's not very many of them. Most people in the United States believe in God, very high, like 80% or something like that. That doesn't make you a Christian who understands the grace of God and how we get, connected with him. So help people understand. I think it'd be great to get like a little bit in your brain on how you work through those conversations. Because I think a lot of people would show up if they were meeting with someone who said they were a Christian, they wouldn't even think to approach the conversation as, well, maybe he's not, and I want to investigate. They just, you say you're Christian? Great, let's go. And then we're off to the next thing. And meanwhile, you don't recognize that they think they're getting to heaven because they've done a bunch of great stuff for God.
Well, I think, and you were there too, I think being in the Southeast, Christian is such an overused word. I don't even know what it means to people anymore. And so when I start hearing that, my alarms do, my intent to go up a little bit just to probe and ask more questions. I had one guy when I asked, on what basis or why do you call yourself that? And one guy just said, well, I was born that way. So that's a whole nother series of questions. And that was an attorney friend of mine. And I started asking him questions and he pushed back, but he started doing this, which is my cue to, start talking about the weather, but to back off a little bit, knowing that, hey, I want to get another meeting and we are still having these conversations, but yeah, you're right. I mean, it's the question is not what, because for a lot of people in the Southeast, Christian just means, what area of the country do you live and who'd you vote for? That, for a lot of people, that's all it means.
Yeah.
And so it's important to kind of dig beyond that because otherwise we would be talking right past each other. Because you're right, I could have just zoomed on and said, hey, you ought to join this group. And he'd be like, what are you talking about? But for me, it's just asking questions. And when I started hearing workspace, then it was just kind of probing and saying, does that really make any sense to you at the logical level? Forget theology. Just at the logical level, does that make any sense? I don't think it does.
Hey everyone, I'm so glad you're listening to the Reach podcast. Reach is brought to you by Search, a ministry that helps you share Jesus. If you like what you're hearing, you'll love the Reach series. The Reach series is our new self-paced video course that gives you what you need to build relationships and have conversations about Jesus in a way that fits you. It won't cost you anything, so check it out today at reachothers.org. Now, let's get back to the podcast.
Yeah, I've found it a helpful practice. I'm trying to think of how to say this well, but when I meet somebody that I don't know, in my mind, when they say they're a Christian or they start using that kind of language, whatever, I always just try to go verify that. Like in my mind, like don't, and there's exceptions sometimes, but in general, like I'm trying to go, I still want to have these spiritual conversations with somebody who says they're a Christian, because number one, if they are, then they're like a brother or sister.
Right.
It'd be fun. I want to get to know, there's how'd you come to know the Lord and all that. You want to know all the stuff. But if they're not, then, of course we want to have those conversations. So either way, you want to talk about spiritual stuff. So, but sometimes we hear that and we might just not talk to them at all. Just assume they totally get it. And so I'd encourage people to not be thinking that way, to have that little bit of that trust but verify deal, and oftentimes you might be surprised.
Well, and one way you could do it, about anybody listening could do it, if you're talking to somebody and you're not from that area, or you went to school in another part of the country like I did, one thing I've done in the past and go, when I went to school, where I went to school, the word Christian meant something different than it does here. How do you define it?
That's a good question.
And just because it's like, hey, it could mean different things in different parts of depending on where you went to school or where you're raised. Just so we're on the same page, how are you defining it? And then you get to hear a little bit of insight, and I'm always kind of listening for the workspace, because that's the most common thing.
And it's a thing, it is so deep in human nature that even those of us who don't believe that's how we get to heaven, you still act like it
Absolutely.
All the time.
Well,
it's just default.
It is default. I mean, it's been drilled in our head. If you want better grades, you got to study more. You want to make the team, you got to work out more. You want to, it's just the if then, and then you come to this, and it's Christianity and faith and grace. It's like, whoa. My coach I had no coach ever gave me grace, right? He wouldn't even know how to spell it.
No. And full disclosure, so I can embarrass you, but Dave is an Olympian, Olympic champion, gold medal winner in 1984, Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And if you can't tell by looking at him, he was a swimmer.
Well, most people are listening.
Look at that.
to
Let's see the wingspan. Come on.
Most people listening to this probably weren't even born in '84. So
most people hosting this podcast were not born in 1984.
I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. But it, being from different backgrounds, because everybody's moving, and place in Dallas, place in Nashville, there's people coming in and out all the time. It's an easy opportunity to just go, hey, how do you? Because I've heard it different ways. You know?
Yeah. No, it's really helpful, and it makes me think of how important it is for those of us who are followers of Jesus and we want to do a good job sharing the gospel with people. It's important that we can actually do that when we get and that we really know the gospel. So it's funny how easy it is to get distracted with all kinds. So we can get really good at apologetics, or we can study whatever, and yet you miss the thing that's right in the middle of this is the gospel. And it might sound simple, but the difference between heaven is a gift of God's grace, by grace through faith in Christ alone, period. You can't add nothing. You add one thing to it, you're out.
Yeah.
Or here's my good things here's all the stuff, here's why I'm worthy to get in. These are diametrically opposed. And so we've got to be, I think, at the center of everything, people who are very acquainted with the grace of God and the gospel, and then we live it out.
Because you're so right. Because it's so easy to compromise. So one of the things I do is I'll write in groups. I'll write up on the board. I'll write 3 words. I'll write holy, perfect, and sinful, or missing the mark. And I'll say, okay, holy describes who God is, and he's not going to change his character. Can't change his character. He's always going to be holy, which means he's separate, and he's perfect. He can only be around those who are holy. Perfect is the standard, Matthew 5:48. That's the standard that we have to meet. Sinful is our nature. That's just who we are. So it's really easy to kind of go, well, you know what? I know he's holy and perfect, but he can, it's like what you say, as soon as you start adding something, I know the standard is perfection, but it's really just a goal to keep us working harder to be better. Well, I know we're sinful, but God knows us and he loves us, and right? So we kind of we start watering it down, and pretty soon we don't really need a savior. We just need to kind of keep our nose clean and keep doing the best we can. And that is not the gospel message, because we forgot the words holy, perfect, and sinful.
Yeah, I remember taking somebody recently to Matthew 5:48, where Jesus says that, it's a summary. It's in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount. It's a summary of really what Jesus has been doing. He's unpacking the 10 Commandments. Well, not all of them, but a bunch of them, right? And kind of amplify it. And, hey, you think, oh, I haven't committed murder. Well, have you ever been mad at somebody?
Right.
You know,
He takes it to a whole new level.
You're in trouble. And so he ends it right with that statement, you're to be perfect, which probably doesn't mean perfect in the way that we think of it.
Right.
But it doesn't matter. I mean, something more like fully mature or whatever. But the point is, it's as God. It doesn't matter. You could say, you know, whatever, compared to God, whatever God is he is perfect. You know, that is a good word for like it's we can't ever be God, you know, and anything like God. And so, and I remember taking somebody, we were looking at all this, and I go, what do you think that means? And he goes, well, whatever it means, it doesn't mean he expects us to be perfect. And I go, well, how do you get that? That's exactly what it says. That is exactly what it says. Is that?
And it gives the why.
And the point of me sharing that is just that it's hard for it's just so counter how so many of us think, and it because the point of it is to get our attention, right? To go, right? No, that is the standard. The point is you can't do it. And
we can't ever do it.
And so part of our job is to help people, I think, to get there, to go, hey, this isn't the whole picture, right? But you do have to kind of get here before I can tell you the solution.
Right. Yeah, you have to understand what the problem. If you start minimizing any of those three words, then soon there's not really a problem that you can't just do by yourself.
Yeah, and that's a great way to put it. Yeah, because like when we minimize the then the good news is, you know, it's okay news, it's whatever news, and you know it becomes
irrelevant.
It's a ratio.
Yeah,
and I always think too of. I've actually said this. I've actually said this to people. I don't know what else to say, but I've had very similar conversations where they talk about, you know, I'm a Christian. How do you get to heaven? Oh, good. I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
Here's all the good. No Jesus. You know, nothing about Jesus or anything. And they've said all that, and I go, you know, that does not sound like good news at all.
Yeah.
It just
sounds exhausting.
I've told people, like, you know, that is supposed to be the good. You telling me that's the good? Like, that sounds horrible. Like, I have to just try really hard and hope I make it. I go, and I don't say it like me, but I'm just saying, like, that doesn't sound like, to me, when you hear the gospel, you go,
it should be a load off.
Yeah, you go, whoa.
Yeah, it should be a load off.
Different thing.
It is, and so in these conversations, I think that's what we got to remember is they're not going to appreciate the solution until they understand the problem. And if you start minimizing or tweaking any of those three words, the problem begins to just kind of go away.
Yeah.
And but yet I think the way God has created all of us, we all know that there's something, we can talk ourselves into it, but at the end of the day, in the quiet of our soul, we know there's something missing. It's like the rich young ruler. I do all those things. What am I still missing? What an odd question. After Jesus answered his question, what do I got to do? Blank, 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 and blank. I do all those things. What am I still missing? That only comes because they realize, no, it's not about doing. I know it's not about doing, even though my life goal is to make that. I know it's not.
Yep.
And that's just our Heavenly Father just going, I'm not letting you go.
Okay, this has been a great conversation. Tying a bow on it.
Okay.
We're gonna wrap it up.
Bo?
What is our one takeaway? So when you think through everything, you know, especially this conversation that we unpacked and went on some rabbit trails with, that I think were great. What do you want people to leave with?
Yeah, I think what you said is
well, obviously it's gonna be
well,
something
yeah, I know, that's why I said that. That way I know this will get on air. Otherwise, anyway. But I think when we're having conversations with somebody, we can't, even if we're hearing the right language, we can't make assumptions. The language is out there where everybody can get it. and even understand it enough to bring it in at the right times in conversation, right? But that doesn't mean that even if they understand a little bit here, that doesn't mean it's anywhere near here. And that takes more questions, more time, more, hey, I've been there. Here's what I discovered. Here's what I've learned. And there's this thing called grace, and I'm now off the treadmill. And it is good, certainly good news.
Yeah, if somebody tells you the gospel and it sounds like bad news,
yeah,
may not be. So that's a great way to end it, Dave. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here and doing this. This is
enjoyed
fun.
it.
Thanks for listening to the Reach podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. That'd be a good idea. Share it with a friend and leave us a review to help others find the podcast. Now, for more resources, please visit reachothers.org and follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and we'd love to hear from you.